we have got Jamie Crenshaw and Winston Duke joining us, the two motion designers behind Brands in Motion, the independent resource showcasing the very best in motion design and branding. Their whole thesis is that motion is not a finishing layer you bolt on at the end, but something that belongs in brand thinking from the strategy phase onwards, something we definitely very much agree with.
Yeah, I mean, a question for me, I guess, is, I'm always keen on kind of how people find their way into the industry. So, how did you guys find your way into motion design, and what pulled you specifically to kind of towards like the more branding side of things as well?
Do you want to go first, Winston?
We always start. Like, who goes first? Wow. Okay. Let me riff for a minute. Takes me back. Gonna reveal my age now. About 15 plus years. I started I graduated, and then I went straight into motion design. No, I'm just kidding. I had like an internship. It was like a couple of months. Come out of university, I did something called digital media design. So it's sort of encompassing all bits and bobs regarding what was that?
Wait, where did you study?
LCC.
Okay, no, I did the exact same.
Oh man, where did you study?
Bournemouth Uni, but they scrapped it 2 years after I graduated.
Oh, is it? Yeah. To be honest, the course is a bit dodgy, but we can go into that a bit later. No, it was good. It was good. Actually, I got lucky because basically, I'm not going to lie, my first and second year, I was just, messing around, getting drunk, blah, blah, blah. And then last year, the last year, I was like, okay, cool. What am I doing? And I think a lot of students get to that stage, and, it was good because the course showed us like photography, sound design, all of those sorts of stuff, which, funny enough, kind of doing now. But my course tutor, he was like, look, if you want to pass this course or if you need some help, just come to me, and I'll kind of help you. And me being me, I was just like, okay, I'm going to come to him every day because I'm the sort of guy, like, I need help. I want to pass. But over time, I think over the next couple of months, he would show me like pieces that people were doing. And I actually want to give a shout out to a guy called Geordie Pages, because he was in a year above me. And I think, I'm calling him out here, but I think he dropped out, or he I don't know really what happened, but he did like an amazing piece of like motion design whilst I was still in university. And I think he got signed on to a motion design studio. And funnily enough, that was one of the pieces that my tutor showed me. And from then on, I was just mesmerized by the idea of like even doing something called motion design. And then after that, I did, graduated, fortunately. Then I did an internship, which was really good. It was like a couple of months. I tried to do some freelance at the time, but this was during the like 2008 financial crisis. So not much luck there. But yeah, I actually did like waitering for a couple of years before I did anything related to motion design. So in between that, actually, I was just doing personal projects, and I have a like strong love for doing stuff for yourself, like motion design for yourself. I just think that keeps the gears and like, the synapses buzzing. And then from there, I got lucky. I was sending my CVs across to different studios. There was a film studio called Cash with a K. They don't really exist, or I think they've changed their names, but it's these two lovely guys that, they do film and like commercials and all that sort of stuff. And they got me my first sort of motion design job. And then the rest is sort of history. From there, I went to a company called TMW, which is, specializes in advertising, had a blast there. That was fun. And then from there, I went to Jones Knowles Ritchie, which again, that's where I met my partner in crime, Jamie. And then the last place I was at was Wolf Ollins, which is absolutely an amazing branding agency, very heavily strat focused, which kind of influenced a lot of what I do with Brands in Motion, to be honest. And I learned so much from the people there as well. So yeah, my journey's been kind of up and down, but in a good way, so I'm very lucky in that sense.
Love that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Wicked. What about you, Jamie? What was your route?
Yeah, so my route was a little bit more linear than that. But my background's basically in like graphic design and more specifically branding design. So I trained as a graphic designer. I did graphic design. I went to uni and did graphic design for 3 years at Falmouth. I then graduated. I got my first job. Yeah, got my first job at a small agency called White Bear Studio in East London. And I did a couple of internships during my final year at uni. And I was like, I really want to go to a small agency. I've been to a small agency. So I went to White Bear, and it was the two founders, and I was their first employee, which was pretty cool. Which meant you had to kind of wear a lot of hats and kind of do a lot of different jobs. I did dabble a tiny bit in motion there. I've done a little bit at uni, but not too much. I'd definitely say it was kind of more traditional graphic and brand design. But after a year, I kind of wanted to get a bit more design time under my belt. I was kind of doing a few different jobs. I was like, no, I just kind of want to be on the tools as much as possible at this early stage, kind of learn as much as possible, take like so much more in and kind of, you know, learn from different people. So moved to JKR where I met Winston in 2017 and was there for 4.5 years. And that was really cool. It was a really like eye-opening experience, kind of working with different people, learning like loads of different techniques, loads of different ways of thinking, and very much a kind of JKR way of working. But I kind of wanted to like scratch that itch of motion design a bit more. Like I kind of like enjoyed it at uni. I saw the cool stuff the motion team were doing. So we were very much split the teams at JKR as well. But I kind of wanted to like scratch that itch a bit more and try it and do a bit more. So it was actually in the pandemic, I kind of like started to open up After Effects again and kind of teach myself a little bit more about motion. And really that's like how Winston and I became really good friends and started praising motion. I'd always like slack him or like call him, be like, hey, how'd you do this? Why is mine so like shit? And you're like, this is like not as good as I want it to be. And he'd be like, yeah, you know, try this, 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 and this, and give me little tips and everything, which was great. But the thing about, well, I found working at a big agency, which are very much in your team, so the design team, the motion team. If you try and do motion, it's like, no, don't worry. The motion team do that. Don't bother. And I'm like, oh, but I want it now. No, just keep it Illustrator, but don't open After Effects. You don't need to. So I kind of like wanted to do it and kind of did it a bit more on the side. And then I moved to Bristol from London. So that was in 2021. Moved to an agency called Taxi Studio, which in terms of sort of number of people was a little bit smaller. So that allowed me to kind of like flex those motion chops a bit more. There was kind of no dedicated motion team. We worked with a lot of kind of freelancers and specialists outside the business. So that meant I was kind of able to kind of give stuff a go, and they were quite like, they were just great in allowing me to kind of do that, working on training and kind of supporting me in terms of like learning more. And then I kind of, after 2.5 years at Taxi, went freelance basically. It's been freelancing 2 years now. And then when I first went freelance, everybody wanted motion. They was like, yeah, make it move. I was like, I do branding as well. They're like, just make it fucking move. I was like, yeah, like your branding. So it's kind of finding the balance of it. It's interesting. Like my career is kind of like the kind of time spent doing motion is kind of increasing as my career's gone on. And definitely now I'd say this, like we were just chatting about before we kind of started, it's like I've just come up to the end of a 3-month book. It's been solely motion. So that's been really good to be like on the tools every day, like learning it, trying new techniques and just having a bit of space to kind of like have a dig around. So it's been good. But yeah, that's my journey till now.
Awesome. You guys touched on a little bit about kind of like learning After Effects and kind of picking that up as well. Like when you were doing that, how did you kind of find that process of like actually learning like After Effects? Was that just kind of like playing around by yourselves? Like, did you just like YouTube? Like for me, I was just kind of like pretty much all on YouTube all the time, like before you kind of had like structured tutorials. So yeah, how did that look for you guys?
I think for me, it was the same sort of thing, just messing around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think sometimes I used to get so caught up in like one way of doing stuff, but I think the best, like, you know, you'll follow a tutorial to the T and then it's like, okay, but I want to do something else. And I think I slowly actually had to break out of that, where it was like, I had an idea, had a sketch or a thought, and then I'll try and build that out. And it was actually funny because although I'm pretty much like on the 2D tools like After Effects, a little bit of Cavalry, all that sort of stuff, I actually started in Cinema 4D.
Yeah.
And
Winston, you're singing a very kind of similar story to me, man. Like Call of Duty 4 intros.
yeah, yo, you're bringing it back. Damn, man. Yeah, so yeah, Cinema 4D was nice back in the day because this was actually pre-Octane. So, you were trying to do all the shading tutorials and all that sort of stuff. And it was great, but it was funny because I actually went a different route, because a lot of the inspirations I was looking at, I was really into like anime and all that sort of stuff back in the day. And I really loved that like 2D sort of 3D look. It was like 2.5 look. And I also felt like a limitation from the programs themselves, funnily enough, where, I wanted to express more movement. Whereas when you're in these programs like After Effects or Cinema 4D, you're limited by its XY position, right? Or its dimensions. But I think that sort of tension helped me to develop my thinking a bit more in finding different approaches to stuff, as opposed to going, okay, this is Cinema 4D, it's used for this. It's used for like realistic textures or realistic stuff. This is After Effects, it's used for this. I felt like me going the opposite way in a weird way kind of helped build out a different style, different way or technique of me, approaching the programs in my own way of doing stuff as well. So it is kind of a combination, just to answer your question, it's a combination of kind of everything really. And then you kind of go with your gut feeling. If you feel like, the stuff you're learning isn't really what you want to do. Like sometimes it's just mess stuff up. You go into the After Effects, like effects panel, and it's just like, let me just add, Gaussian blur with some random thing,
Just pick and mix, just chuck them on.
And then see what you can come up with. I think that's usually the best way to learn. I still do that even now, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really interesting now, like seeing, like, been kind of looking at some of the tutorials of like School of Motion and their kind of courses of like how they structure it. It's like, I feel like if I had that, like when I was learning, that would be so helpful. Like the kind of like the more structured, like, okay, here's the interface, learn the basics. Like,
Sure.
I'd see stuff and go like, really polished stuff and be like, cool, watch a tutorial of that. It's like an hour long tutorial. And it's like, barely know how to use the program. You're like, okay, like in at the deep end. Like,
Yeah, that's how I learned. Funny enough, funny you mentioned that, Jack. It's like School of Motion was one of the courses that Tassie like funded for me, and it was the Emmanuel Colombo 12 Principles of Motion Design.
Yeah.
And that was just like, I'd never really thought about it like that before, because I'd always jumped into After Effects and, like you said, just move stuff around. I always follow tutorials, but they never go quite like what you wanted, and it always like used to grow my beans. But that one was just like, okay, this is how you like think about stuff, and this is why stuff looks good and why it works, and it's like quite eye-opening for me. And then another thing I used to do is I just used to like copy stuff, like genuinely. There was a reel from Buff, and I was like, that type is sick. And I just like downloaded the MP4, put it into After Effects, and recreated it over the top just to learn how they did it. Like I was just like, I wanted to break it down and be like, oh man, how did they make it like look like that and move like that? And like, when did they make it? When did the transitions happen? So I like took like 5 seconds of that and spent like 2 hours just being like, that frame is that, and that frame is that. Which is cool. So I think, just by learning, by like seeing what's out there, is a cool way to do.
That's sick. Going back to you two kind of meeting each other and kind of sparking this friendship, I'd love to jump into Brands in Motion a little bit. It began as a place to showcase the best in motion design and branding, and now it's grown into something else now. Like you got resource, you got talent directory, jobs board, interview series. I'm really curious, like what sparked it for the two of you to kind of get rolling with that, and also like what does it become, and what do you think it's gonna become, if that's not too big a question to ask?
That is a huge question, but a good one. I think like it started because it started at JKR when we were both working there, and it kind of was spawned out of the fact that we used to like almost create like mood boards for like ideation phases, and we try and fill like 6 buckets. It was logo, typography, color, illustration, tone of voice, and motion. And like the first 5 buckets were pretty easy to fill. Like you went on Pinterest, you could fill logo in like, seconds, like minutes. Typography was easy to find. But motion was always like a really, really hard one to fill, like, especially like brand specific motion. There was stuff like Motionographer and Dribble, which were like good, like they were like good sources, but there was nothing that was like specific to branding. I remember, I think I messaged Winston like one day when we were like working mid-pandemic. I was like, is there anything that does like just branding. He was like, there's lots of UI, there's lots of character animation again, which is useful sometimes. I was just like, is there anything that just does branding? And he was like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, well, should we just start one? And he was like, well, yeah, let's do it. And then we literally just got the Instagram handle, came up with a name. And at first we were like, the name's terrible. We'll just go with it. But it's just one of those things. It's just kind of lasted and quite like it now. Started it, made a logo. I'm pretty sure we bought the URL straight away. Well, I think we just in case. And then we just started posting stuff that we'd find, we'd see, and we just would think that's cool. We'd send some stuff to each other, and it almost just became an extension of our little like Instagram saved kind of folder. But we were just putting it out there and just seeing what would happen. And then it got kind of like snowballed from there. Really, I think there was one point a few years back where we kind of like, it was just as the world was opening up. It was 2021, 2022. And we were like going back into the office. I think we both just started new jobs actually, I think. So we kind of stopped posting. And even when we stopped posting, we went from like 7K to like 12K followers. So we were like, okay, we're not even posting and like people are still following us. So we kind of like refocused a bit and we're just like, right, there's someone in this. Let's kind of like push this now. And that's kind of what it's become now. We kind of always have these ideas. We made like a mirror board with like loads of ideas, and there's still stuff we want to do in the future and stuff we will do in the future. But it kind of, and this is literally something we spoke about recently, is our big hairy aim is to be like the new home of motion, like to be the place where everyone comes to get inspiration, to get jobs, to get tips and techniques, to get anything to do with motion in that branding space as well. That's our goal. So we've kind of moved from inspiring people to connecting people almost. So we want to be that like connecting hub between people, clients, studios, information, resources, everything. So that's our shift now, is connection, I guess. It's like what we're trying to do next, I think.
Awesome. That's super cool. One of your core arguments is that kind of motion belongs in brand thinking from the strategy phase, not just kind of like bolted on at the end. In practice, what changes when like a motion designer comes into that conversation like that room early versus when they're not? Like how does that kind of play out as well? Because something we touch on and kind of push a lot as well about, motion not being an afterthought, but like how have you seen that play out in these situations?
That's a great question. I'll jump in quickly because just to kind of riff off of what Jamie was talking about just a minute ago as well, and this I think will link to what you're kind of suggesting as well, talking about like I'm like pure motion, so I came out the womb. Nah, just kidding. Like animating up on it. Like I started watching. I think I got influenced when it came to like animation in general when I was like 15, 16. And then, the progression from there kind of reached me, brought me to a place where I'm at now. But I guess the way in which motion designers think, like we think in movement. And I think that foundation is really important, but it's not just that as well. It's like the years and years of referencing that we look at, like, like the motion community, I would still argue is quite young, you know, and back like 10, 15 years ago, is even smaller. So you would understand and know the different types of motion designers and the different types of styles that they would create and stuff. And like, you would get an idea, would all be inspired by each other. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I think, like I said, the way that motion designers think is very different to how maybe like a brand designer or someone that is, within the branding sphere and then coming into motion. We have like, I used to go onto Vimeo like pretty much religiously, so we had like a vast sort of array of different types of inspirations we can pull from. But again, it's like bringing in that different way of thinking. But I think when you start to converge the two, that's where it starts to get interesting. Because in the beginning of a process, right, like there's so many different ways of thinking. Like, you've got like the whole sort of spectrum of like building a brand that you have to think of, right? But motion brings that third perspective, right? Or third dimension, sorry, that's not usually considered as much, right? Or just like, it could just be weird stuff, right? Like some random glitch, like let's say you've got a logo, right? Like people just, and like initially like spin it around or something. But then with, you can start to like break it apart, push it forward, push it back. Like there's so many different ways you can like express a brand that will start to inspire someone working, with just like a 2D flat plane. And I think it brings another level of richness to the brand itself. And then basically once you start to, when you start from that angle, everything else becomes like an extension of that, and again, like brand designers, I swear the one word they love is depth, like in some depth. And it's like, so once you start to bring stuff into like 3D and like 2D motion design, then that's where you can start to add those elements in, and you can start to like pan in, like scale out and do all of those sorts of things to help bring the brand to life. And essentially what you're trying to do is communication, right? So through that, you can communicate the brand more effectively and efficiently as well.
I'm curious off the back of that. Like I've always noticed, like Jamie, you studied graphic design. I've always noticed some of the best designers that I see out there have formerly been, studied graphic design or were formerly kind of like strict graphic designers, moved into motion. But Winston, I'm curious, just coming back to what we touched on around the digital media design. I'm curious, how do you think that influenced your approach to motion? Because you said you were looking at things like sound design, and when I was doing the course, we did like experiential stuff. Like I remember doing projection mapping stuff like a long time ago. I'm curious, like from your kind of background and way into the industry, how did studying digital media design shape the way and maybe carve out a bit more of a unique path to the way that you approach motion?
Oh, that's a great question. And I know I ripped into digital media design like earlier on. But
I'll rip
Circle back.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We got bumped, man. I think it influenced me a lot because, funnily enough, I did photography for like, honestly, like 10 years, and this was like a funny story actually. When I graduated, I actually wanted to do photography initially, and I love motion design. I wanted to do both at the same time. And this was influenced from us doing pinhole photography in a course, which was amazing. Like, it was so random in a way, but it was great, right? And yeah, my first internship, it was really good. But I remember being really young and just being like, kind of want to do like both, or I want to do this. And I think someone there said, you're going to have to pick between one of the two, right? Which I think is completely fair, right? But instead of listening, I think what I did was like, okay, he's got a good point, but I still want to do photography. So in the background, basically not every day after work, but most of the time after work, pick up my camera. Like I went traveling a lot as well. I'll just do photography on the side. And I think that influenced my style and like composition and like the way I thought as well. And also I had like a really, really good friend who was into like film, like, really old films, and like he was really into Asian cinema as well. So like he would show me a lot of films from that region as well. And that influenced like the way I thought about like not just motion, but just anything in general. Like it just gave me a unique perspective, right? So I think digital media in a way was great because, again, it's like I explored so many different angles, and it kind of made me feel like I didn't have to pick one. I think that's it. Like if I went into graphic design, I think, or something very specific, you're just going to be learning that, which is great if that's exactly what you want to do. But I think at that time, I was a sort of person, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I found that I enjoyed all of these different aspects that, that was being taught to us. And, I kind of now I even understand the importance of all of these things even more now and how they integrate together because, digital media, I knew, sound is important, 3D, animation, we had that, like even grading, we did a bit of that, color theory. And although, look, I'm not a master of any of them, but like, I understand the importance of them.
That was the best thing about digital media, right? It taught you basically like kind of something about everything.
Yeah.
Not really that much.
Yeah. Oh my God, I got stories about that, but yeah, we'll go to that
I
later.
can't wait till the next time we see each other. We could dive into that. Jamie, what about you? Was it about motion that kind of like, I guess you still do the both, but like, where is your heart? Is it in motion? Is it in graphic design? What's your favorite out of the two?
I think it's a combo of both, which sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's the truth. It's just like, I think like it's definitely been both. I don't know. I was just thinking like as you were chatting, what drew me to motion, but I just think I just kind of enjoyed it. I think you could like, again, going back to like Jack's previous question, there's like certain stuff you can only communicate through motion. There's only certain concepts or stuff you can bring to life through motion. So it just kind of became like a fun enjoyment element of it. And then combining that with branding as well, I think it's like a nice little sweet spot. And it just happens like clients and agencies are quite interested in that as well, which kind of, benefits my kind of like work side really. So it's definitely kind of an area of both of interest. It's just, pursuing them equally, but kind of overlapping them if possible is the sweet spot for me.
Awesome. I guess one of the questions I kind of had as well was kind of like, I guess arguably kind of the hardest part of the job in terms of like how you like manage feedback as well. 'Cause I think there's something that, especially like education, you're not kind of like ever like exposed to or kind of have to deal with. And then all of a sudden you have to go out into the world and then you've got people like critiquing and kind of reviewing. And especially as you go down and like overlap into kind of the strategy side of things, where again, it's even more subjective, right? How do you kind of, I guess manage feedback, like navigate and talk about the reasons why you've done this? And because I think that's always the one that's like always really hard for, I think motion designers to get right in terms of like actually like, standing up for the reasons why, like talking about the theory behind why they've done that. Like what's your kind of approach to that?
Whew, that's such a great question. I think mainly because, I think most like strategy and motion design, like those two words, again, it's kind of a new concept, and you're fighting against brand designers or, designers in general who have built this knowledge for a very long time. And like the, the structure has been there for some time as well. So we're trying to inject ourselves into like, quite like into a legacy system, right? But I think, and it's funny because I've been really, really thinking about this as well, and I think this is what like juniors as well or entry level people that are coming. This is a really big topic that I'm going to dive into, and be good to pick your brains on. But I just think there's the way in which you talk. You need to learn how to talk to people in the industry. Like you got to know what makes them tick. And because as motion designers, we speak a different language. So it's a communication thing, first and foremost, right? Like we might be talking about the easing, like when we're looking at, look at the specular on this. It's amazing. Wow. But then we need to talk about, I think essentially you need to talk about the feeling, right? It's all about feeling. And that's actually what motion design and branding is all about. How does this make you feel? And I got to give a shout out to, some guys at Wolf Wallings that really, helped me kind of like Finn. We worked on like the Lloyd's motion brand
Killer project.
I remember it was so funny. We were sitting, sorry to give this anecdote, but it was cool. We were just sitting there, it was like late at night, we were just looking at like the motion, and we were like, what, there's something like missing. And it was less about the technicalities of what we were building, like, all the curves were there, kind of, but it's just, what are we trying to portray? And again, it came down to like, how is this making us feel? And I think if you can describe that, you're way ahead. So like for anyone at any level, right? It's like, there's levels to this, right? You got your brand strategy, you got the brand development, and then, they all kind of like, they merge together and kind of work in tandem with each other. Motion comes in as well. So like what you're building, does it feel like it connects with the brand strategy? And I know it's a bit of fugazi sometimes in the beginning because you're like, yeah, like this abstract cue, feels weightless. Do you know what I mean? But you kind of have to build it out like that, right? And over time, you know, you kind of build this world. And that's the thing, is you're building a world as you're kind of moving through it, right? And there's a rhyme and reason as to why you're doing this sort of stuff, because, oh, it makes me feel like I'm moving through water or something like that. Or it makes me feel like I need to do something that might be like Nike, right? There's a certain energy, a certain pace to it. So as motion designers, we've moved, like traditionally motion designers, you know, it's had its thing, but like when you're bringing it into design or strategy or design, that's when it's like you have to think about, change the language a bit. It's like you keep all the you know, your sexy stuff going on, but yeah, when you're tackling a brief, think about the feeling and what it's trying to portray. Yeah. Sorry, I was just blabbing towards the end, but that's basically
No. So
Oh,
we always talk about a lot as the kind of like the meaning behind the movement and you
Sure.
know the rationale behind that as well. I think again like the crossover between like you know more kind of traditional animation of like character animation, you know, like how would you do the same thing of that? You know, if you've got a character, how would you know, is it you know really energetic? Is it kind of more this? You know, like how does that translate into kind of like more graphical design? You know, because essentially it's kind of following the same footsteps, right? It's like you're trying to add that life, that movement, that feeling to these objects or to this icon or to that bit of text that's you know quite static or you know quite graphical, and then like it then changes the way you feel.
yeah, I think that's great advice as well for anybody that's like studying motion or looking to like communicate. Like you said, that communication side of things with people that might hire them. I think it is about that feeling. I think like you can make shit that looks cool, like, but if it doesn't have a purpose behind it, then it's not achieving anything, right? And I remember like one of the little thing about going back to Jack's point about emotion in motion, we got this little like graphic that we used to explain it, and I remember putting it up and it performed really well, and it was mostly creative directors or like the kind of people that would be hiring freelance. Obviously, just resonated because it was all talking about motion as a feeling rather than going into the real kind of like technicalities, like you said. And I think that's a really great kind of takeaway for anybody that's like listening to this that's in freelance in terms of communicating the craft. I think just the feeling it gives is a really, really great angle to kind of push on.
Yeah. And sorry, just to add to that, it's like, you know, look, I'm going to be honest. Like, I added bounce to all, like text. It could be like shapes. I added bounce to everything for a good 10 years, and it's been really until even now. I'm like, give me, come on, you know. So even I struggle with it. You know, it's like I'm definitely not perfect, and again, it's like I think it's funny because I think actually, ironically, to be a good brand, like motion designer in branding, I would argue really understand motion design first, like become really, really good. And that's why you see a lot of like the big studios like Buck, for example, even Oddfellows, The Furrow, just whatever's coming into my head, Bucko. They started off as motion designers, and then they slowly moved into well, not slowly, but they moved into branding, and their branding is really, really good because they already have that taste, they already have that motion element there, right? So actually, I would argue if you're coming in from the beginning, I would learn all of the principles that Jamie talked about. You know, we actually have a bit of a shout out to us, but we have something on our page which is like about motion design principles, and it's a kind of riff of like the 12 principles, that Disney made. But I think if you start to incorporate those elements in, it starts to just bring your motion design to life, and then you can tone it down or bring it, to the forefront as much as you want, depending on, what you're working on and stuff. So yeah.
Awesome.
Nice. I've actually got that right up on my screen at the
Oh,
minute.
is it? Damn,
Um,
mistakes or something there, man.
I'd love to see like, the two of you, I can imagine just inundated with like new work, folio, stuff being sent on the Instagram. I'm really curious. There's a lot of shifts in design trends at the minute. I think like largely, not necessarily emotion. I just think in the wider design sphere, largely with AI, I'm seeing a lot of like going back to this like retro analog kind of like style. But when speaking about motion, I'm really curious from what the two of you see every day, all day, whether it be kind of working on projects or whether it be stuff coming into your inbox, what are like what are the new trends that you're kind of seeing, be it tools, workflows, or just styles?
I think some of the stuff we're seeing definitely more. I think there's a few bits, but one is like a more in-depth rigor around like motion systems for brands. So before it might be kind of like your sort of typical logo animation, a couple of transitions, and maybe a nice like reel to kind of launch it all. But now we're kind of seeing a lot more kind of in-depth versions of that kind of feature like sort of motion principles, kind of fundamentals, a lot more kind of expansive across typography and layout, photography and imagery. So I think people are really kind of seeing the value in having a consistent motion system across all your digital touch points, and they want that rigor and they want that depth that you would typically find in a brand guidelines. They now kind of want that in motion guidelines. But I think some of the more like even more exciting stuff is the tools that people are creating to allow future iterations of what you're making to be produced. So there's kind of almost a shift that we're seeing away from creating kind of everything in After Effects and the kind of client coming back to you to make all the small changes or all the small iterations. It's kind of like, well, what tools can we now build that allow us to kind of like take these patterns, these backgrounds, these transitions, and almost create a whole suite of stuff moving forward. So I think the kind of rise of like Claude Code and kind of ChatGPT and all the kind of AI bots that kind of help you write things is super helpful in almost like creation of these new tools and a new kind of set of parameters, and then clients and studios can kind of take them and like kind of run with them, which I think is really interesting. It's like the democratization of design, and but it's kind of sifting into motion, which it kind of hasn't typically had before. But it feels like it's kind of shifting that way, which I think is cool, to be honest. It's quite an exciting place to be.
Lee's
Yeah, I
nice.
think
Oh, sorry, go on, Jack.
No, I was just going to say they're kind of seeing this kind of amalgamation at the moment of kind of like motion and tech. So like, you know, people like building their own plugins, you know, like vibe coding tools where they can, I've seen like a few pop up recently. I can't remember the name, but where people are basically like designing their own like motion like platforms with like, you know, simple timelines to kind of solve problems. And you're like, oh, this is crazy. Like, you know, it's just like building, and then obviously like tools like Cavalry as well, where you can like just do so much more in terms of like versatility, like building different outputs, like, you know, the web-based app as well. That's super cool. And I think you like the extension of that again, like moving forward, it's going to be really interesting to see where the kind of evolution of tech and motion kind of like build up simultaneously.
For sure.
Definitely.
I think as well, again, one thing I'm really excited about is, you know, you've got all these free programs. Look, should I be saying this? Like, I got Cinema 4D license in some funny ways, you know, like we call it a license, to be honest. But like we've got all of these new free programs. Like I literally, look, I've got Blender up right now. I'm messing around in it. I'm loving it. It's got to be like, I just think we're in a new sort of like all you need like 20 quid, right? And like you don't even need that anymore. Cover is free, isn't it? Like there's just so many free programs, and like what I'm starting to see, actually, I think I saw something on LinkedIn recently where someone connected Cavalry. They built a script that connects Cavalry to Blender. So you can do the animation in Cavalry, and then it kind of like, you know, stuff like that. That's where you're going to start to see the more interesting stuff. So for me, it's less, again, like there's so many different tools out there. Actually, I would argue it's actually a bit overwhelming. You know, you've got Cavalry, Rive, you know, After Effects programs and stuff, Blender, you know, you've got all the web apps and so I think, at least from what I would like to see, is people taking their own route a bit more. Because like I think we're so saturated or so inundated with the idea of, okay, you should use these programs because these are what the studios use, and there's some truth to that, 100%. Like that's what we use to make work. But I think the next level, and I think the next generation are going to be using tools in a completely, what they already are, in a way that's kind of already blowing my mind, you know? And again, it's like, oh, connecting Rive, like Rive's got like a 3D engine now. It's like, how do you connect that to the web and then create something else from that? Like Touch Designer as well. I think even shout out to Flat White Motion. They they did some really cool. I think they did like an opener recently, and they used Touch Designer to do some of the animations and just stuff like that. It's just that's what kind of gets me excited. Like this kind of feels like a bit of shade I'm throwing, but it's like I think we've seen enough cool stuff from the traditional programs that people use. I see people get excited when someone messes around in Rive. And even if it's just like a ball bouncing up and down and it's like moving, you're like, wow, that's cool because it's new, it's fresh, again, it has that technical element to it. So definitely agree with you, Jack. I think there is like, again, a convergence more between technology and motion design. And I think I would love to see that explored more. Yeah.
I guess as well, like leading on to that is that, by building and using new tools, you're also going to create new and unique outputs as well. So I think that automatically will help stuff become more unique in its own, just because the way you're building it is different. So you're not going to, you're going to end up with very drastic, outputs. And we've seen that a lot from, a few studios where they're doing really interesting stuff with, like, whether it be code-based animation, you create really interesting stuff that's very different automatically just because you've not ever done anything like that in the program that you're in. And I think that's always really interesting as well.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of cool design comes from the unexpected as well.
That's it.
That's sick. So I want to jump into maybe a little bit of a little bit of like Q&As that might be helpful for freelancers. I imagine a lot of freelancers or a lot of people upcoming in the industry will be watching this, and like I think particularly with the two of you having gone through studying, gone into agency work, and then now going freelance, I feel like you'll definitely have a lot of wisdom to impart. One thing I wanted to ask about was like being easy to work with, when it comes to file organization, workflow, all the like unsexy stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see in the final render. I'm really curious, like, what do you think separates a freelancer that a studio come back to and rebook and use again and again over one that they would work with once and maybe decide not to again?
It's a good question. I'm a big efficiency guy. I'm a big organized guy. And if you don't name your files and your After Effects file, your Illustrator layers are fucked, I'm gonna be pissed. So I'm like, if I can just make everything as easy as possible for someone to pick up and do, and be, easy to work with, nice to work with. I think it's like when the pressure's up, you kind of realize, you kind of see the true side of people. And I think if you can just, be the calm amongst everything else, be organized, be on time, be nice, be polite, but still put your input, still, if you don't agree with something, say it, still kind of have your 2 cents, but do it in the right way. I think that's the most important thing. But I think just always be in the knowledge that, this project, this file, this whatever doesn't end with you. There's always going to be stuff in the parcel and always going to be stuff people pick up, and then you're reflected in that. So if someone picks up and they're like, bloody hell, Jamie, this is an absolute mess. And if, Winston comes in, he's like, this guy's a fucking idiot. Like, don't get him back. Then it's all going to be there. The receipts are there. So I think be kind of neat and tidy. Always have like forethought in terms of like, this is going to go beyond me. And just keep it like, polite and nice. Be considerate.
I always like the one of kind of where you mentioned there about kind of like pushing back, kind of like not being afraid to like challenge stuff. I think that's always one that kind of gets overlooked. And, again, especially like for myself as well, like, I always want like people to, if I say, oh, could you guys explore this? Like if they go, oh, I did maybe what you've asked, but I've also done this because I think it looks way better than what you said. And then, like I love being wrong in those situations. I'm like, yeah, that was shit. Like what you've done is way better. So let's go with that.
That's how the better work happens though, isn't it? Like you can tell
100%.
when someone's done a project on their own versus when someone's done a project in the teams. It's like cool ideas, lots of different stuff. And it just makes it all better. So I think that's absolutely it. And like, you might think you have the answer, but someone else might have a better answer. So yeah, it's the fun stuff.
And just like being able to iterate as well, like not just being like, okay, one and done, trying 4 options, exploring, I think again, that's where, where we really like to play around as well in the kind of like development stages of projects. It's like, okay, like let's play around, let's try and build it in Cavalry, let's build it in After Effects and see what works better, and it's like, oh, actually, you know, what are the pros and cons, and like what's going to be more efficient, especially if it's like quite a big project and we've got lots of like reusable elements. It's like, actually, again, going back to the kind of efficiency side of things as well, it's like, how can we make it efficient and, you know, like make it easy for ourselves? It's like, if we're going to get changes, you know, is it easy to make those changes, or if actually we boxed ourselves in so that if we get any feedback, we have to spend ages redoing stuff? So it's just like, how can you kind of set it up in a way like that?
For sure. I would
Absolutely.
say as well, like, I think it also boils down to like, we're just all human. Like, I know that's so like cringe to say, but it really is, because, and the reason I'm like, I was grinning through all of that is because Jimmy as well, like everything you just said, like we're literally writing an article and like word for word. It's like you've read the article already. Wait, what's going on? But, you know, it talks about all of these things that, you know, all of you guys have brought up, which is, you know, like, and I kind of boil it down to empathy, right? When you go into the industry, like, to be quite blunt, no one really cares about you, even if your work's good. So, like, how do you present yourself in a way, even as a freelancer, right? Like, how do you present yourself in a way where people like warm up to you and, you know, ask you to come back if you do work for them? And I think a big part of that is the oversight, right? It's like, and this is where kind of the experience comes in, because if you know the process enough, you know kind of where you're at, you know, then it makes it easier for everyone else as well. But if you're new to the industry and it's your, you know, first time kind of delving in and you don't have that experience, like, yeah, just being easy to work with. And again, it's like, like again, like your file, like the way you've organized your files, like color coded. Oh my God, if someone did that, I'll be like, thank you. But it's little things like that. It's the details in between the work, because another reality is that there's a lot of talent out there. Like, we did a post on our stories yesterday. So the idea would be to get, you know, entry level people and try and expose them to different studios. So it's still in the works, right? We got a lot of people sending through their work, and you know, it's actually kind of scary. There's a lot of talent out there, but yeah, like it's really hard, because even with them sending their work through, a lot of them didn't actually really read what I'd written, which was like, send through your portfolio, send through, and it's like, just
Oh, the amount of times I had a freelance call out and had that.
so it's like, why are you sending me a UX UI design portfolio, bro? It's like, do you
Read
know
what you're applying for.
it's crazy, but it's like I appreciate, like, I genuinely appreciate them trying to reach out. But my point is that, like, people pick this up like from day one. So even if you're trying to apply for a job, they can already sense, oh, is this guy like, they really, like, if they didn't really answer my, you know, questions or what I want, how can I get them to work on a job properly? You know,
Mm.
something as
Mm.
basic like that could eliminate you, right? Same with freelance. So I think empathy, like, that's obviously like one step. Once you get into the job or you're working with people, just realizing people are human, like, you know, client services, the CD, everyone is just trying to make it, you know, and trying to, you know, as well do good work as well so they can keep the ball rolling. Um, but yeah, just like, if you have that mindset of like, I just want to help these people out, I want to do good work as well. How do I do that? And sometimes you will make mistakes, but it's in those mistakes where you're like, oh, okay, you're saying, Jack, oh, maybe we try this way or try this way. You know, you're working together,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately as well, like, you're all on the same team, like you're all trying to get the same objective. They're not kind of going out of their way to go, oh, how can I make this guy's life really difficult? You know, they're just trying to ultimately get to the same goal. So I think, you know, kind of thinking that as well, because it can be frustrating as well. Like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, if you're in a big team, you're kind of like working on stuff. And I think sometimes, again, as like, you know, as a designer, you're kind of like, it's easy to kind of get precious about the work as well, and kind of be like, oh no, it has to be like this. So I think letting go of that a little bit sometimes as well, not entirely like all about defending the work as well, but, you know, I think also like finding that balance of like, you know, they also really understand like the client and the brief and what they're asked for. So I think, you know, making sure that you can actually answer that as well is really important.
Sure.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, obviously, like, what's next on the horizon for you is kind of bridging that gap, right? I think connecting talent, connecting with what hire. I'll subtly tease about something that we might be doing together, hopefully at some point later on this year. Very excited for that. But I'm curious, like with Brands in Motion as well. What is coming up? Is there anything, any plans that you could lift the veil back a little bit and maybe give us a little sneak preview of anything you got planned for this year?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in a little bit, and then Jamie, you can tell me to shut up at any point. So like, shut up. I think the biggest thing is we're making this transition, and Jimmy, you kind of like alluded to this a little bit as well. We've made this transition between like posting inspiration, like inspiring a community, inspiring people that are interested in motion design and branding. And we've kept that going. But now we're kind of moving, especially with our follower count as well. It's like, I feel like now we have an obligation to provide a different perspective of motion design in general, which is, upping the sort of like, I want to say articles, but like really want to talk about the industry more. And Jack, you mentioned about like, there's not really much information for people that don't have exposure to the industry, how to even act or even know what goes on in the industry, especially if you haven't worked in a studio before, right? So it's essentially kind of me and Jamie like pouring out our knowledge, and like we also speak, like we have candid conversations with loads of different motion designers that have been doing it for years, like even yourself, right? It's just, I think what I'm so happy and thankful for is the motion design community is honestly one of the nicest communities I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. The fact that you can message a motion designer, be like, yeah, cool, this is what I do, and it's really, really heartwarming, and I think my aim, as I do motion design, but I think our aim in terms of like building brands in motion together is like keeping that energy, right? So it means that as we're talking about like, what is it like to work in a studio? How do you really like, I don't think like entry level people are told or expressed like the difficulties of entering the industry as well. So we want to talk more about those things, right? Have those candid conversations that no one's talking about. So then when they go into an interview, they're more equipped, to like, I've had like some juniors and graduates reach out to me and be like it's hard, like they don't know like what to do when on a job, or like also when they go into an interview, and that's a typical sort of thing that happens, but it's like how can we help them develop themselves so they send the right message when they're in those positions. But just to again answer your question, sorry, I go around blabbing. I think again it's like for the future we want to connect the community more with each other, and then connect them also with people external to the community as well. So it's these studios as well, even though they're part of it. It's like people that don't understand motion design. So we're bridging the gap even more. And then we're kind of working in behind the scenes on connecting studios with freelancers as well. So we're building out a database of like just motion designers, and yeah, that's steadily kind of filling up in the background as well. So like studios might reach out to us, or anyone basically that needs a motion design, and we can find like specific talent for that. Yeah, what else? We've got a jobs board that's kind of up and right. Like it's actually kind of crazy because we put an ad out on our Instagram recently for Oddfellows. I think that's like, why did I get 3K likes? I don't know. It got a lot of likes. So it kind of made me think, wow, okay, are people really hungry for work, or is it just that like, just because we started putting jobs posts out there, people are excited? But I don't know what it is, but kind of made us feel we need to really push into that and, make sure that people are getting the opportunities to get work as well. So that's definitely on the focus. Jamie, anything else that comes
Just
to mind?
connections to clients, maybe some events where we connect people with the right people, but anything that connects, motion designers with each other, motion designers to clients, agencies to clients. That's our kind of big push now. Is all about connecting the right people, being a champion for motion design, and helping people in the best way we can using this platform that we've created to kind of help people effectively.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I love
it.
It's much needed. I think it's yeah. I mean, it took me a long way to find my way into the industry, and I feel a bit lost trying to come up in it. And I think the more we can do to give back, the better. And certainly, yeah, keep eyes peeled. We'll hopefully have a little collaboration that's going to be working on that a little bit later on this year. But hey, look, it's been really, really fucking good getting you both on here. It's been a long time coming. We're very excited to sit and chat. It's been a pleasure, pleasure as always to chat with you both. So, thank you so much.